I thought I'd try my hand at a model review of a G55 which I recently picked up, and this is a low kilometre car which was in the Mercedes club, which I was fortunate to find. Now, we've had a 460 since 1985 in the family, and I've had it since 1995. Big Red's got an M117 5 litre V8 in it from a 126, and that was put in a few years ago, but it is still truck-like and it behaves as such. Now, the short period we've owned the 55 is night and day on what the 460 is. 460 is slightly lifted. I just fit some new Ibach springs and Coney Raids from ORC, so it's a bit higher than the 55. But ultimately, the panels are essentially the same. Now, I've fit those side air intakes on this car, and I've got twin snorkels running in the old 460. You can see the 500 badge on the back that I've got on there, but it's essentially the same panels as the new 55. So Ben's made the first V8 G-Wagon in 93 using M117s for the 500 GE, but that was in the 463. Then they went to the 5.4 litre M113, normally aspirated in 99, and then in 2004 they chucked on the supercharger, which boosted it to 350 kilowatts, and this was revised over the years until the final year production like this one, where they were cranking out 373 kilowatts with this twin scroll supercharger situated between the banks. So here's my V8. You can see with the AMG badge on it. These bonnets have a single hydraulic strut, which our old 460s don't, to hold them up, and the bonnet will tilt a little bit. You can see the engine's twisted to actually clear the steering box. Just driving along, I just want to get the normal drive noise. So the car's nice and quiet and well insulated until you actually put your foot down. Coasting without any load, 60 k's an hour, no radio, and that's still at 60 k's an hour under no load. Now, with a coefficient of drag of 0.53 compared to say 0.25 for the current E-Class, the economy is appalling. The best I could squeeze out was 15 litres per 100, and the manufacturer says you can get 12.7 on the freeway, which is not possible. 75 litres goes in to fill an empty tank to reserve, and then you can put up to 96 litres. Checking the previous owner's last 8,000 Ks, he was getting 19.5 litres, which is pretty good. The other appalling thing, you pump out 370 something grams of carbon dioxide per kilometre, which is not ideal by any stretch. Now, one thing you can't get away with all this weight is the top speed, because it's limited to 210 k's an hour, which is probably due to stresses on the tyre. And in addition, with all that power, and if you think about chucking it also into low range and amplifying it, they decided to put the 5-speed transmission on this thing rather than the 7-speed in most of them. So this was all reinforced. And the 5-speed has an old Tiptronic gear shifter mechanism that you'll see, not paddle shifters, in the G55 model. So here's the front bash plate, which is very solid. The car has a 60 centimetre fording depth, and it's well protected. There's breathers for the diffs and transfer case. Now, I thought I'd show the difference in exhaust tone of this versus the E500, which was the M113 block that the car was based on and had the supercharger bolted on. Now, the G55 comes with 19-inch alloys and same front and rear tyres. They're not V-rated, surprisingly. My car also had side steps and a bull bar, which were nice. There's the rear pipes, which I haven't been burnt by yet, but give me time. Now, the bonnet latches on each side and a central catch. Mine doesn't actually close properly. One of the sides doesn't latch, so I'm going to get this sorted out soon. I don't know if this is a common problem. So you can see the rain and headlight sensors for the automatic, and the rear view mirrors were updated the following year. These do not have blind spot assist. Now the fuel tanks were changed on the 460 to the 463 from the rear to the side, and you can see it's one of the few panel differences that exist. Although it says 95 octane, we usually just put 98 in Australia. Now these essentially have a flat rectangular front windscreen, which is great for catching all of it with a wiper, and also it reduces the sun letting at the front. The bi-xenon headlights are very effective with the washers, and you can see here, nice and bright with the high beams too. And there's fog lights underneath using the switch. So you can see the reversing camera above the wiper motor, and you've got your spray nozzle there. At night there's modest illumination, there's no significant LEDs or anything like modern cars. You can see here, and it's got the usual rheostat sort of control just left of the odometer. Everything sort of lights up. There's only one reverse light on the passenger side lower bumper. The outer lamps on the tail lights are actually the indicators and hazards, so a little bit different to previous models. There's a fog light on the right lower bumper. The following year received the running light LEDs below the headlights, which are not on the 2011 model. Mine's got the electronic brake device fitted aftermarket because it had a factory tow bar fitted. Now, the factory tow bar is a little bit different to the standard sliding tube. It's made by Westphalia, and I actually had a bit of a problem. I'm trying to look for a bike carrier for this at the moment, but I need to find a standard fitting, and I can't just put one on the tow ball because it won't clear this spare wheel carrier. So I've got my work cut out to figure out how to get this sorted. But anyway, it's a factory device. It'll work for towing, and there's an adapter cable for it. Now the interior is a nice place to be. You're welcomed by the illuminated door sills. The following year the interior was updated to be more consistent with like a 212E class. You can see here the G55 lever. There is no lever ignition like on some 211 55s. The cluster is out of a 203C class. The steering wheel looks like a 211, and the seats are the nice designer ones, which are consistent with the GL of the time. Perforated leather, orthopedic adjustments. We've got heating and cooling, and the rear seats have the soft nappa leather. Interestingly, most Gs in Australia had rear heating, not the G55. Now the electronic controls you can see there are from a W140 and do all the necessary. I never learned how to use those orthopedic bolster adjustments there. I don't want to play with them, something will probably explode. But comfortable seats. The differential locks to be applied in order. And I've got a Alcantara roof lining, which is really nice. The center speaker there, and the seatbelt coming out of the roof for the middle passenger. Now illuminated sill in the rear. Again, they're just adhered down with tape. It's actually a little bit cheap. You've got splits in the door for sound, and that middle seat leather is nice and soft. There's a seatbelt coming down which can be detached and retract into the roof if you don't want it. But otherwise the actual interior is quite nice, if not a little bit dated now. So cup holders, that's basically it for the car, two in the middle. You can see there's the fan cooling for the front seats, and mine had some interior televisions which are aftermarket. The carpets have all been protected by the rubber mats, which I have no plan on taking out. So the nice chrome spare wheel carrier, and in the back you can't get a factory set of seats anymore. They used to have the fold downs running parallel with the car. We had them in our 460. We could actually put 9 people in there, but not in this model. Although I've seen someone fit a third row of seats parallel to the others. I don't know how they did it, probably using those 3 tie-down sights. You've got a chrome AMG entry sill. There's the beepers for the reversing sensor, which is an interesting setup on this one. So you can see here on your camera, you're backing up. It underestimates it quite substantially. You're actually a lot further away than you think, and there's an odd beeper on the rear passenger D pillar that lights up as you get closer and pings. You can see it lighting up here. It's quite an unusual sort of array. They didn't put one in the roof like the station wagons had on 211s. And you look at that and think, oh, I'm quite close, but you're a long way away. So that's from our 163 ML, which is kind of cheap, the low range, high range button. There's a 203 C-Class Aircon controller. It's dual zone only, and that looks like E-Class sort of controls with the heating and cooling. They look like W140 rear view mirrors. That's a 126 sunroof part number from the Generation 2, so it slides and tilts. Again, they just went to the parts bin, I think, and grabbed everything like 140 seat switches there, which are nice, and 203 window switches. Now, there's a known issue with the sunroof cable, which comes loose from the hosing in the rear. So when you open this 126 sunroof up, you can hear the cable, which I need to reattach. Close it. And then we've got the tilt. So there's no keyless go. And it's a simple key with just lock and unlock. There's nothing fancy to it. Now the command is NTG 2.5. There's no television. I think you can play DVDs. I can't stream Bluetooth music, which is a bit of a killer. And I've got to figure out a solution whilst keeping the factory unit. There's an auxiliary cable in the glove box, but I think that's for basically an iPod. So I've got to figure out how I can stream my music here. Inbuilt 6 exchangers, which actually fed the navigation, which is now outdated. So tend to just use your phone. Here are some extra cup holders in the glove box if you need them. But that's basically for an iPod, I understand. Now the stereo itself is a Harman Kardon unit. It's reasonable. There's multiple speakers in here. 3 on the top of the dash. You've got those in your front door, splits in the middle door, and then some in the D pillars. There is also a center speaker in the roof. Now you can't watch the DVDs anyway when you're moving, so surround sound and all the rest, I'm not quite sure on the merits of that. And you can see the speakers on the D pillar here. The insulation on this car is much better than our old 460, which I filled up with all this Alpine gear and subs many years ago. So there's that center speaker in the roof. Now there's lots of info on the cluster. It's a little bit dated looking now. Distance remaining, if you can get 550 to 600 Ks, you've really done very well. You're probably looking more like 450 to 500 out of a tank, which is not great. The modern phones link up without a problem. I've got a current Samsung, and my wife's phone also links up without any issues. The doors are quite skinny, so they couldn't fit the sensors for finger risk. So you only have automatic down. You don't have automatic up because they couldn't put the safety mechanism in, is what I understand. I may be wrong, but you have to manually pull the thing up because the dated panels did not fit them. The dual zone aircon works adequately. You've got a number of vents at the top which have kept us cool so far on some reasonable warm days, and then you've only got a couple of vents in the back. You don't have the usual B pillar vents, which I actually don't think do too much in modern cars, but you've got a couple in the center console for the rear passengers. The center console itself has two compartments. One's an upper cradle, probably for some ancient 3310 Nokia or something. I don't know what I'd do with that. Historically, I've fit these Visio units to stream a Bluetooth phone, but this has it inbuilt anyway. The levers for this are a little bit annoying, but then it opens up to a deeper pocket down there, which doesn't have a USB charger. You've got the Tiptronic left and right, very old school. And there's your differential locks to be done in order. You have several stalks on the steering wheel. You have an electronic steering wheel adjustment at the bottom, usual indicators and wipers, and then you cruise much like any other Merc of the last 40 years. On the right, you've got the Linguatronic. Normally this is on the steering wheel, but on this one, you just pull the stalk towards you, say your name, and that'll bring up the number. It's actually worked okay so far. Some of the earlier ones are horrendous, but this has done the job with some of the simple names that I've inputted so far. They did go cheap on a couple of things in that they couldn't be bothered converting the left-hand drive cars with regards to the bonnet release stuck on the passenger side, the handbrake. They haven't done this since the 201 180E when they left the handbrake on the left side in Australia. And then also even the glove box handle's a bit cheap to leave that far away from the driver. I'll leave you with some blind engine noise of the 55 for your enjoyment. Thank you.